it's Liza. Filling in for Nate this week. That footage you just saw was from San Francisco. Turns out it's not as sunny as I thought California was, so we decided to last minute split to this campsite behind us. We're just outside of Yosemite National Park.
We ended up driving almost 4 hours yesterday evening and got into this campsite like right as it was getting dark. We just barely made it. It's kind of a long trek into the Stanislaus National Forest. That's where we are right now. And like Liza said, it's just outside of Yosemite. It's a pretty nice area, except for the fact that all of these trees were like formerly on fire. It looks like it was like a major forest fire around here not too much, maybe a year or two ago at this point, but kind of a cool place to hang out for the day. And we're gonna head into Yosemite this afternoon. Didn't end up making it to Yosemite. I realized that it was actually like a 3 or 4 hour drive from where we camped last night. I kind of just picked a place on the map when we were leaving San Francisco. Like I said, we were kind of rushing against the sunset and just trying to find somewhere, so it actually was a little bit further from the main entrance than I originally thought. We realized that and decided to move closer to the main entrance. We're now about an hour and a half or so outside the main entrance of the park, and we are also still in the Stanislaus National Forest. The drive into this site was absolutely insane. It was like this 6-mile dirt road. I don't even know if you could call it a road. There was all kind of potholes and everything. It was pretty scary, but I'd say it was definitely worth it. This is definitely an upgrade from yesterday's site where we just had a bunch of burnt trees in the background. We're right next to the Tuolumne River, I think it is, and it's got some pretty crazy rapids right now. Just kind of cool to hang out. It's also really hot out, and it's a lot cooler down here by the river than it is up at the campsite. So for dinner tonight, we're gonna be trying something that I've actually never had before. It's basically like a kielbasa sausage mixed with peppers and onions and then served with couscous. So it should be kind of interesting. We're gonna make it all in the Instant Pot here. But first, I have to make some dim sum. We have some leftover dim sum from when we were in San Francisco, and it was taking up all the space in my only Tupperware container here. So we gotta empty that so we can store any leftovers that we have with the kielbasa. So we're gonna munch on the dim sum right now while we're cooking and then move on to the next thing.
I usually cut the other way.
What is this, culinary class?
Wow, that's really nice. Look at those cuts.
Oh, baby was back. Checking him out. He's scouting out his prey. You gotta be careful with these little buggers. It's a rare breed of California.
So I've stayed at some pretty buggy campsites before, but this one definitely takes the cake. It is like by far and away the buggiest. There's bugs like everywhere, all over the van, even inside the van at one point. It was pretty weird. I mean, it wasn't that bad, but it's just kind of annoying, I guess. It makes sense, we're right next to the water, but I guess the river is also kind of what makes this campsite so awesome, so it's all about trade-offs. We're gonna hit the road and head into Yosemite National Park. I mean, this road is pretty rough. It's definitely passable by like trucks and like higher clearance vehicles. I'm able to do it, but just barely. I don't know if I'd ever try it in a school bus though, like these people coming down it right now. It's a little bit too big and it's just a windy road. It's really narrow. And that's like a shuttle bus. Like that takes trips up and down this road probably every day with a bunch of random passengers. I wonder if they know what they're getting themselves into. How are you? Thank you very much.
All right, have a good day. Take care.
think I've seen more waterfalls today than I've like ever seen in my life in all years combined. Is it the same for you too? Pretty close. This place is absolutely incredible. I feel like we've been out here all day and we're still like only halfway to the way back to the place where we started, and then we got to get on a shuttle and take a shuttle all the way back to the parking lot. But it's been really cool though. We've seen some really awesome waterfalls. One of them was the Vernal Falls, I think, and then we kind of just kept going to, what was the name of it was Cliff Point or something like that, or Clark's Point. So pretty cool, pretty awesome place to explore. Early on in this hike, we had to basically climb through a waterfall for the most part. Like we were like right up alongside it, and we were completely drenched, like completely soaked. So I couldn't get any footage, unfortunately. I had to kind of keep my camera wrapped in like 3 different plastic bags in Liza's backpack here. But once we got to the top, we could get some pretty cool views. Didn't end up leaving Yosemite until pretty late yesterday evening. It was probably close to 8 o'clock by the time we actually got out of the park, and it was definitely a pretty long day. Coming down from that hike took a little bit longer than we had thought. It ended up being a pretty long hike, and then when we got to the bottom, we had to wait almost an hour just to get on the shuttle bus to get back to where we had parked, basically on the other side of the park. Parking was very, very limited. It was very difficult to find parking. The crowds were like nothing I've ever seen before. I mean, I went to Zion a couple of years ago during like peak season, and I was really overwhelmed by the crowds then. I remember I talked about it in the video that I made back then, and this was even worse than that. This was absolutely crazy. There were so many people there, and it was only a Tuesday, which is kind of surprising that there would be that many people on just a Tuesday, but I guess that this is just a really popular time of year to be out in Yosemite. And that being said, you know, the crowds were crazy, they were terrible, but I do not regret doing that hike and having that experience. That hike was one of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen, and being next to the waterfall like that, being able to walk up to it and get sprayed by it because there was so much snow. The water, you know, the flow of the water is like, they've never had anything like that before. So they were talking about, a lot of the people we were talking to on the buses and stuff like that, you know, who've been coming to Yosemite for years and years, and they've never even experienced anything like this. So it was pretty neat. Definitely something that I feel pretty lucky to have been able to experience. But that being said, like, we kind of decided not to spend a second day in Yosemite and go on another hike simply because it was just too crowded. There was no way to even get back into the park, and by the time we find parking and by the time you get on a trail, I mean, it takes hours and hours to do that. I would definitely go back to Yosemite at some point in the future, but probably like later in the season, maybe, if, you know, at some point when there's less of a crowd like that. I'd love to do maybe like the Half Dome Trail. I talked to a couple of people yesterday that said they did that. Thought that sounded pretty neat. Last night we ended up staying just at a national forest campground. It was like, what, $20 or so to camp there? And $21, and we kind of just stayed at like a group site because like there were so many people at the campground as well, but ended up working out. We were totally fine. So our plan for today is to head towards Sacramento, which is like a major city. We haven't showered in like 3 or 4 days at this point, and
3 days.
3 days. It's 3 days you're counting. You kind of got the countdown going, so it's gonna be a pretty nice shower, I think. And this is Liza's first experience with like van life and this whole thing. Like, she's never done anything like this before. Even sleeping in the upstairs bunk. I mean, how's that bad? I mean, she's the first person to ever sleep up there.
Yeah, it's a tight space, but all in all, it hasn't been that bad. I have short legs, so maybe I'm the perfect specimen for sleeping up there. But other than that, I think I have to like find the right position. But once I get there, I have no problem, you know, sleeping through the night. So it hasn't been bad at all. Yeah,
I mean, it is a small space. It's a pretty tiny bed. I think it's only like 5'9", like the total, like from the end to the, you know, to the other side of it. So. So we ended up driving for a pretty good portion of the day today, maybe 4 or 5 hours. It was a bit of a long day behind the wheel, but we're now just north of Sacramento on some BLM land, I guess just south of the Mendocino National Forest in Central California. We were in the Central Valley and then kind of made our way up this mountain range, and we are basically camped right now on top of the world. We are on top of a mountain with amazing views all around in every direction. This might be the best campsite that I have ever been able to stay at before. I think I'm going to talk about it more in the next video though, guys. I'm going to end this one here. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to y'all in that one. The only thing is, this area that we're in, I'm pretty sure it was like a former forest fire at one point, because like all the trees are on fire, and there's a bunch, well, they're not currently on fire.
Oh, this one's a beaut. false alarm.
Oh.